The Celestial Council was the most powerful institution in the known universe. It governed thousands of star systems, shaped the fate of entire civilizations, and enforced laws that defined the balance of the galaxy. Every species, from the ancient Zephyr to the war-hardened Targons, held a seat in the Grand Assembly Hall. But there was one seat that had never been claimed, the throne at the center of the chamber. The seat of Terra had remained vacant for centuries. Among the delegates was Rylus, a young diplomat from the Targon Dominion. He sat at his assigned place, his 4 fingers drumming anxiously against the polished alloy table. It was his first time attending the council, and though he had studied intergalactic politics for years, one mystery had always baffled him. "Why is Terra's seat empty?" he finally asked, his voice cutting through the hum of quiet discussions. Silence. The question, though simple, sent ripples of unease through the chamber. Rylus noticed the way some delegates shifted uncomfortably, others exchanged uncertain glances, and a few even averted their eyes as if afraid to acknowledge the subject. Finally, Chancellor Vorin, a towering reptilian from the Svar coalition, cleared his throat. His deep voice resonated across the hall. "Terra chose not to participate," he said carefully. "They refused to attend. They refused to vote. They refused to rule." Rylus frowned. "But why?" Another silence. Then, an elder Zephyr, his pale and wrinkled skin illuminated by the dim council lights, exhaled slowly. "Because they do not need to," the elder murmured. His sightless white eyes gazed into nothingness. "And that is what terrifies us." A chill ran through Rylus. He expected someone to scoff at the statement, to dismiss it as nonsense. But no one did. The silence deepened, heavier than before. "They are just another species," Rylus insisted, trying to suppress the unease creeping into his voice. "The same as us." The elder shook his head. "Not the same." At that moment, Chancellor Sothran of the Gathari Federation turned sharply toward the elder. "Enough of this," he growled. "Terra is irrelevant. We do not speak of them because there is nothing to speak of." But Rylus was not convinced. He saw it now, the fear in their eyes, the tension in their voices. They weren't indifferent to Terra. They were afraid. Why? His mentor, Counselor Valan, who sat beside him, leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Drop this, Rylus. Some questions are better left unanswered." Rylus hesitated, but before he could press further, a sudden beeping sound filled the chamber. The main display flickered to life. "Emergency transmission," an officer announced. "Outer rim sector. Unidentified distress signal." All eyes turned to the screen. The grainy video feed crackled with static. The image shook violently. A blurred figure, barely visible, appeared. A voice crackled through the noise. "We found it. We found the truth. The council must know." The transmission cut off. The chamber was silent. The officer, visibly pale, turned back to the assembly. "The signal. It came from an abandoned Terran research station." A shiver ran down Rylus's spine. Terra had abandoned that station centuries ago, or at least that's what everyone believed. That night, Rylus couldn't sleep. The transmission replayed over and over in his mind, the fear in the speaker's voice, the way the signal cut out so suddenly, and worst of all, the eerie silence that followed in the council chamber. They were hiding something. But what? Rylus needed answers, and he knew exactly where to find them. Deep within the council complex, hidden from public access, was the restricted archives, a vault containing classified records that the council never intended to be seen. Walking cautiously through the dim corridors, Rylus approached the massive security door. A red warning flashed. Access denied. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out a small hacking device. The Targons were not just warriors. They were engineers, problem solvers, innovators. Seconds later, the lock clicked open. Rylus slipped inside. Rows of glowing data terminals stretched before him, each holding centuries of forgotten knowledge. Quickly, he searched for records on Terra. The system hesitated, as if reluctant to give him what he wanted. Then hundreds of restricted files appeared. Many were sealed by High Command. Others had been erased, vanished as if they had never existed. But one file stood out. It was old, nearly 1,000 years old. Its title sent a chill through his bones. Final Council Report on Terra's Withdrawal. Rylus opened it. The screen flickered. A video log began to play. A human figure appeared, tall, clad in an ancient military uniform. His expression was unreadable. His voice was calm, yet weighted with finality. "This is Admiral Elias Voss of the Terran Defense Fleet," the man said. "Terra will no longer participate in the Council. Effective immediately, we are withdrawing from all intergalactic affairs." Rylus leaned in closer. This was it. The moment humanity left the galaxy. But why? "We have seen what lies beyond," the Admiral continued. "We have learned the truth about this universe, and about the enemies that watch from the dark." Rylus's fingers clenched the console. "Enemies?" "The Council is blind," the Admiral said. "You believe your fleets and your laws keep you safe?" He paused. His gaze turned cold. "You are wrong." Rylus's heart pounded. "We are leaving," the Admiral said, "not out of fear, but because we must prepare. When the time comes, when the void stirs once more, we will be ready." The screen glitched. Then came the final words, "Pray that we never return." Then the file deleted itself. Rylus staggered back, his mind spinning. What had the Terrans seen? What were they preparing for? And why did the Council fear their return so much? Before he could process it, the door behind him slid open. "Step away from the console." Rylus turned slowly. Chancellor Sothran stood in the doorway, flanked by armed guards. His reptilian eyes gleamed with fury. "You shouldn't have seen that," the Chancellor growled. Rylus swallowed hard. He had just uncovered the Council's greatest secret. And now, they couldn't let him leave alive. A thick cloud of dust swirled around them as they stepped into the abandoned station. The corridors were dimly illuminated by flickering emergency lights, casting eerie shadows against the metallic walls. But it wasn't the dust that made the air feel heavy. It was something else. A presence. Rylus tightened his grip on his blaster. "I don't like this." Beside him, Valen ran a scanner along the walls. "This place has been abandoned for centuries." He paused, frowning. "But look at the energy readings. There's still power running through this station." Rylus exchanged a wary glance with him. "Then who activated the distress beacon?" Before Valen could respond, a faint metallic click echoed through the hallway. Both men froze. Rylus raised his weapon, scanning the darkness ahead. "We're not alone." Valen pointed to a nearby control panel. "Let's check the logs. If there's any data left, we need to see it." Moving quickly, they navigated through the dust-covered corridors and entered what appeared to be the station's command center. Though coated in a layer of age-old grime, the consoles hummed softly, their screens still active despite the long silence. Rylus initiated the last recorded log. The screen flickered, and a grainy video feed appeared. A human scientist stared back at them, terror in his eyes. "This is Dr. Elias Corrin. We were wrong. So wrong." Static crackled through the speakers. "They told us not to look, warned us never to activate the final archive. But we did. And now—" A deep rumble shook the station. The video distorted. "They're coming back." Dr. Corrin's voice trembled. "We thought they had left us behind. We thought we were safe, but we were fools." Rylus and Valen exchanged uneasy glances. The recording continued. "They never left. They've been watching, waiting." The scientist's face twisted in sheer terror. Humanity is coming home. The screen went black. A heavy silence filled the room. Then, from somewhere deep within the station, a mechanical voice activated. Final protocol initiated. Stand by for arrival. Rylus felt ice creep through his veins. Something was waking up. A second tremor rocked the station. Dust rained from the ceiling. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Rylus spun, blaster raised. What the hell was that? Valen's eyes remained fixed on the screen. Dr. Corrin's final words echoed in his mind. Humanity is coming home. Valen swallowed hard. I think something just woke up. Another tremor. The walls groaned as ancient machinery roared back to life. Consoles flickered, displaying strings of code in a forgotten human dialect. Emergency lights brightened. Red warning symbols flashed across every monitor. The station spoke again. Final protocol engaged. Automated systems online. Rylus took a step back. This station was never abandoned, was it? Valen's fingers danced across the console, sifting through long-buried data. His breath hitched. Oh no. Rylus's stomach twisted. What? Valen turned to him, face pale. This isn't just a station, it's a command center. A new alert pulsed across the screen. Reactivating fleet. Stand by. Rylus felt his blood run cold. Reactivating what? A third tremor. But this one wasn't coming from inside the station. Something outside was moving. They sprinted to the nearest viewport. At first, they saw nothing, only the endless void, the distant stars, the shattered remains of ships long dead and drifting in silence. Then, light. One by one, dark silhouettes emerged from the wreckage. Gigantic shadows, hidden beneath the debris field for eons, their hulls gleaming as ancient reactors roared to life after millennia of slumber. A fleet. Not just any fleet. The lost Terran armada. Rylus's breath caught in his throat. The warships before him were unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering dreadnoughts, sleek battlecruisers, titanic carriers bristling with weapons. Their designs were old, yet far more advanced than anything the Celestial Council had ever built. And they were waking up. One by one, their engines ignited. One by one, their weapon systems came online. Valen grabbed Rylus's arm, his voice barely above a whisper. The Council always wondered why Terra never came back. Rylus couldn't tear his eyes away from the rising fleet. They never left, he murmured. A final message blinked on the command console. Terran Armada online, awaiting orders. Rylus's pulse pounded in his ears. Something told him. They wouldn't have to wait long. The station trembled as the massive warships fully powered up. Energy signatures spiked across the sector. The silence of deep space shattered beneath the awakening of humanity's lost fleet. Rylus and Valen stood frozen, staring at the sheer scale of the force before them. The massive ships moved like sleeping giants, shaking off the dust of time. Engines ignited, weapons systems hummed to life, defense protocols activated. Rylus exhaled sharply. This fleet could wipe out the entire council in hours. Valen's fingers trembled as he accessed more data. His eyes widened. This isn't just a fleet, it's a war machine, an entire planetary invasion force. Rylus frowned. Then why would humanity leave it behind? Valen shook his head. Maybe. They never meant to. A sudden alert blared. Incoming transmission detected. Source, unknown. The screens flickered. A new voice filled the room. Cold, mechanical. Unauthorized access detected. Identify. Valen hesitated before responding. I am Counselor Valen of the Celestial Council. We mean no harm, we... The voice interrupted. Identity not recognized. Scanning. A red beam flickered across them, analyzing their forms. The station's AI processed the results. Then, silence. The screen shifted. A figure appeared. A human, his face obscured by a dark visor, his uniform bearing no insignia. He sat in a command chair surrounded by glowing holoscreens, his piercing gaze locked onto them, sending a chill down Rylas's spine. Then he spoke. "You are not authorized to be here." Rylas swallowed. Who are you?" The figure leaned forward slightly. "I am Admiral Victor Hale of the Terran Defense Armada, and you have trespassed on a classified military installation." Valen's breath caught. "This station is active?" Admiral Hale nodded slowly. "It was never deactivated." Rylas's mind reeled. "The Council believed Terra abandoned the war, that you left the galactic stage centuries ago." Hale's expression darkened. "That's what we wanted them to believe." The word sent a chill down Rylas's spine. Valen hesitated. "But why?" Hale's eyes burned with something unreadable. "Because we saw what was coming." The console flickered, revealing a massive approaching fleet, dark, jagged warships moving toward Council space. Hale turned to them, his voice like steel. "And the Council is not ready." The war had begun. The command center trembled as the massive holographic display flickered to life. Before them, the dark, jagged warships of the Eclipsed Ones slid into view, sleek, menacing, their engines pulsing with an eerie crimson glow. Unlike any fleet the galaxy had ever encountered, their vessels moved with terrifying precision, swift and deadly like predators in the void. The once silent expanse of space outside the station now thrummed with the low, ominous hum of their arrival. A presence so overwhelming it sent waves of dread through the room, but they were not the only ones waking up. The exiled fleet, silent and dormant for centuries, now surged to life. Valen's heart pounded, his mind raced even faster. The Council, the institution he had dedicated his entire life to, would never believe this, never accept that Earth had been preparing in the shadows, waiting for this exact moment, hiding away for generations, only to emerge now, just as the Eclipsed Ones made their move. It sounded impossible, insane. Rylas turned to him, his face pale but his voice steady. "What now?" Valen clenched his fists, his eyes scanning the holographic battlefield. The Eclipsed Ones were closing in fast. Their arrival was not just an attack. It was the beginning of something far greater than any of them had imagined. He met Rylas's gaze, the weight of the decision settling heavily on his shoulders. "We need to warn the Council," Valen said, his voice low but firm. "But we need proof. Something they can't ignore." He turned back to the hologram, watching the enemy fleet draw closer. "This isn't just about defense anymore. It's about survival." Rylas exhaled sharply. "The Council isn't going to like this. If we come forward with this, they'll try to cover it up. They'll do everything to keep this hidden." He hesitated. "How do you plan on making them listen?" Valen's eyes flickered toward Admiral Hale, who stood silently, his gaze locked onto the encroaching fleet. The man had endured something unimaginable, and now he was ready to unleash a storm upon the galaxy. "We need something bigger," Valen murmured. "We need to show them." He gestured to the looming enemy fleet. "These invaders, these Eclipsed Ones, they won't stop until every system under Council control belongs to them. If we don't act now, they'll wipe us all out." Hale spoke then, his voice as steady as steel. "The Council has no choice but to ally with us now. They can't survive without the exiled fleet." He paused, his tone darkening. "And we will make sure they understand that." Rylas turned to the Admiral, his thoughts racing. "What do you need from us?" Hale met his gaze, his expression unreadable. "I need you to make them believe. Show them the fleet. Show them the truth they've ignored for centuries. We'll do the rest." His voice was cold, unshaken. "Earth has not been forgotten. And we are not just here to protect humanity. He turned back to the warships looming outside. We're here to save the galaxy. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Rylus felt a chill creep down his spine. This was no longer just about Earth. No longer just about one species. This was about everything. Vaylon took a deep breath and stepped forward, fingers hovering over the control panel. The transmission had to be sent now, before it was too late. Council transmission open, the screen flickered. Counselor Vaylon, this is a high-priority line. Do you have the data we requested? Vaylon's voice was firm, cutting through the static. This is not a request. This is a warning. He took a step closer. A fleet is on the move. If you do not act now, the Council will fall. The line went silent. Then a voice, cold, dismissive. We've heard these doomsday stories before, Counselor. The Council has more pressing matters to attend to. We do not have time for wild accusations. Vaylon's jaw clenched. His voice darkened. You have no idea what's coming. The transmission cut out. Silence. A cold fury bubbled inside him. Vaylon turned sharply toward Hale. It's begun. The Admiral nodded, already moving toward the station's command controls. We give them one last chance to wake up, but if they refuse... Rylus stepped forward, his voice low but resolute. Then we fight. Outside, the enemy fleet drew closer. Their warships descended, their crimson engines burning against the darkness of space. The exiled fleet was ready. There was no more time for diplomacy. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in the battle ahead. Vaylon stared at the holoscreens, tracking enemy movements. For years, the Council had dismissed these warnings, ignored them, brushed them aside as myths. They would not ignore them now. A loud chime interrupted his thoughts. The transmission reconnected. A familiar face appeared, a Council official. But the cold indifference from before was gone, replaced by something else. Fear. Counselor Vaylon, she said, her voice shaking. We have just confirmed it. The enemy fleet is real, and they're coming. Vaylon didn't waste time. I told you. You didn't listen. Now it's too late for doubt. The official paled further. We will mobilize the defense fleet immediately. You were right, Counselor. We cannot waste time. Vaylon's response was blunt. Your fleet won't be enough. He turned to Admiral Hale. Earth's fleet is the only force that can stop them. We will fight with or without the Council's support. But if you want any chance at survival, you will stand with us. The official hesitated, then nodded. Understood. The Council will support you. Vaylon exhaled, then turned to Admiral Hale, who was already preparing battle plans. The Council is mobilizing, but we have to act now. Hale's gaze hardened. We don't have the luxury of waiting. The fleet is ready. Rylus stepped forward. This isn't just about Earth anymore. If the Eclipsed Ones succeed, the entire galaxy is at risk. Vaylon's mind raced. The strategy was clear. The plan set. This was it. Signal the fleet. A moment of silence. Then, Hale's voice rang through the command center. Fleet in position. Awaiting orders. Vaylon turned back to the battlefield. The enemy was here. The time for hiding was over. His voice was cold. Fire when ready. The station trembled. From the depths of space, the exiled fleet unleashed devastation, blazing through the void, weapons tearing into the advancing enemy. The battle had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn what Earth had been preparing for all along. The command center trembled under the intensity of battle. Laser fire, plasma torpedoes, and the relentless hum of shields straining under pressure filled the void outside. Every impact sent shudders through the ship as the eclipsed fleet intensified their assault. Vaylon stood at the central control station, his face grim as he analyzed the tactical display. The enemy fleet was adapting, coordinating their attacks with unnerving precision. "Counselor Valan, we have a problem," Admiral Hale said, his voice tight with frustration. Valan glanced at him. "What is it?" Hale pointed to the screen. "They're learning. Their fleet is adjusting to our tactics, and worse, they're locking onto our shield frequencies." Valan's jaw clenched. His eyes flickered to the enemy formation, like vultures circling, waiting for the perfect strike. "What's the status of our defenses?" Hale exhaled sharply. "Under heavy pressure. Our shields are starting to buckle. We can't keep taking hits like this." Valan's mind raced. The exiled fleet was strong, but it wasn't invincible. If the shields failed, they wouldn't last much longer. He needed a solution. Fast. "We need to disrupt their coordination," Valan said, tapping his fingers against the console. "If we can sever their communication even for a moment, we can throw their fleet into disarray." Hale frowned. "Their command ship is heavily guarded. Getting close won't be easy." Valan's eyes hardened. "Then we make a distraction." He turned to Hale. "Give me a strike team, small, fast, and armed to disable their communication hub. We hit them where it hurts." Hale studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Understood. I'll assemble the team." Valan turned to Rylus. "Warn the council. Get as many civilians evacuated as possible. We can rebuild ships, but we can't rebuild our people." Rylus nodded, immediately relaying the orders. Valan took a deep breath. "Let's move." Within moments, a small squadron of the fleet's most elite pilots assembled. These were the best of Earth's exiles, fearless, relentless, and prepared to risk everything to protect their home. Their ships, equipped with the most advanced tech ever built, powered up with an ominous hum. Valan turned to them. "This mission is simple. We go in fast, disable their communications, and get out. No heroics." One pilot, Commander Hera, met his gaze and nodded. "For Earth." The others echoed the phrase in unison. Valan swallowed hard. "For Earth." The strike force launched, slicing through the chaos with expert precision. Valan remained in the command center, heart pounding as he tracked their progress. The eclipsed flagship loomed ahead, a fortress of darkness in the void. "Squadron, stay sharp," Hera's voice crackled over comms. "They won't let us in easy." Enemy warships moved to intercept, plasma cannons firing relentlessly. The squadron weaved through debris and weapons fire, their maneuvers flawless. "Reinforcements incoming," Rylus called from his station. "They're trying to box us in." Valan didn't hesitate. "Push forward." "Understood," Hera responded. "All units full speed ahead." The squadron split, one group engaging enemy ships to create a distraction, while the others dove toward the eclipsed command vessel. As Valan watched, his chest tightened. This was their one chance. The strike force closed in, dodging fire as they neared the communication hub. The enemy flagship was shielded by smaller warships, creating an impenetrable perimeter. But Hera's pilots were relentless. They tore through defenses with precise, coordinated attacks, dodging enemy fire, weaving through the battlefield like phantoms. Then, "We've reached the relay," Hera reported. "EMP ready to deploy." Valan's mind raced. He had seconds to decide. Disabling the communications network would throw the eclipsed ones into chaos, but it would also reveal their intentions, making escape nearly impossible. "Now, Captain. Do it." "Deploying EMP." A blinding surge of energy erupted from their ships, washing over the eclipsed flagship like a tidal wave. For a brief moment, everything went still. Then, the enemy fleet staggered. Their formation wavered. Their coordinated movements faltered. "Direct hit!" Rylus shouted. "They've lost communication across their fleet." Valan's breath caught. They did it. The eclipsed armada, once an unstoppable force, was now a fractured, scattered mess. "All units rally on the flagship," Valan barked. "We've got them on the ropes." Admiral Hale's voice cut through the comms. "Their defenses are down! We strike now!" The exiled fleet surged forward, striking like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. The enemy, now disorganized, stood no chance. Explosions filled the void as the eclipsed warships were torn apart, one by one. Their fleet, once a symbol of terror, was now crumbling. "Mission complete," Hara's voice came through. "All units pulling back." Vaylon exhaled, tension releasing from his chest. The hardest part was done. "Everyone, fall back to the fleet," Vaylon ordered. "We've made our mark. Now let's end this." As Earth's fleet closed in on the last remaining eclipsed ships, Vaylon knew one thing for certain. This war was far from over. The next battle. The fleet regrouped, cautious but victorious. Vaylon stood at the command center, watching as reports streamed in. They had won this battle, but the eclipsed ones were not defeated. "Counselor," Rylus called. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Hale." The comms crackled. "We intercepted new intelligence," Hale said grimly. "They're sending reinforcements. A full-scale assault is coming." Vaylon's blood ran cold. "How long do we have?" "Hours. Maybe less. This wasn't their full force. It was only the beginning." Vaylon turned to the fleet's officers. "Prepare for the next phase. We can't let them regroup." Rylus hesitated. "Do we have the strength to fight again so soon?" Vaylon's eyes darkened. "We don't have a choice." He turned to Hale. "We need to hit them where it hurts. If we can take out their command ship, we break their coordination for good." Hale nodded. "Then that's what we do." The next few hours were a blur of planning, coordination, and preparation. The tension in the air was palpable. Officers moved with urgency. Pilots readied their ships. This was no longer just a battle for survival. This was war. As Vaylon boarded his shuttle, preparing to lead the next assault, one thing was clear. The eclipsed ones had underestimated Earth, and now they would learn. Humanity was not a forgotten power. They were the storm that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The war had only just begun. The silence before battle was always the worst. Vaylon stood at the helm of the command center, his eyes locked onto the holographic battlefield. The eclipsed fleet had not retreated. They were regrouping, adapting, preparing for another assault. And this time, they wouldn't make the same mistakes. Rylus moved beside him, scanning incoming reports. "Their reinforcements are closing in. We have a limited window before they overwhelm us again." Admiral Hale's voice cut through the tension. "We can't let them regain control of the battle. If they bring their full force down on us, this fleet won't hold." Vaylon nodded. He had already made his decision. "We strike first." Hale's expression didn't change. "What's the target?" Vaylon pointed to a cluster of red markers on the holoscreen. "They're command ships. The EMP may have disrupted them, but their coordination is already stabilizing. If we take out their primary fleet controllers, we cripple them for good." Rylus exhaled. "That means sending another strike team in deep. The last one barely made it out." Vaylon didn't hesitate. "Then we make sure this one doesn't fail." He turned to Hale. "Assemble the best pilots we have left. We'll need to hit their control ships simultaneously. If even one remains operational, they'll adjust." Hale gave a curt nod. "I'll lead the attack myself." Vaylon met his gaze. He knew Hale wasn't the type to sit back and watch a battle unfold. "Then we launch as soon as you're ready." Within minutes, the strike team was prepared. The squadron consisted of Earth's most experienced combat pilots, those who had fought in the shadows for years, waiting for this moment. Vaylon watched from the command center as the fleet split. "Strike team, this is Admiral Hale. Stay tight. We make this quick and clean." The fighters roared into space, weaving through debris as they closed in on their targets. The eclipsed ones responded immediately, their warships shifting into a defensive formation. Lasers tore through the darkness. Plasma fire erupted in streaks of red and blue. "They're already adapting," one pilot shouted over comms. "We're taking heavy fire." Vaylon clenched his fists. The enemy was learning faster than expected. "Hale, do you have a shot?" A pause. Then, "Locking on now." The command center's holoscreen displayed the squadron's flight paths. The exiled fleet's fighters zipped between enemy vessels, dodging incoming fire with near impossible precision. And then, "Missiles away!" Hale's squadron unleashed their payload. A barrage of high-impact warheads streaked across the void, slamming into the eclipsed command ships. For a split second, there was nothing but silence. Then, explosions erupted across the enemy fleet. "Direct hits!" Rylus shouted. "They've lost another command ship!" But even as the enemy staggered, they were still fighting. "Squadron, break off and return to formation," Hale ordered. One by one, the strike ships peeled away from the burning wreckage, dodging last-second counterfire. Back on the exiled fleet's flagship, Vaylon watched as the eclipsed ones faltered. "Their fleet is breaking apart," Rylus reported. "Their coordination is failing," Vaylon exhaled. "Then we push forward. Now." The exiled fleet surged ahead, pressing their advantage. The battle was shifting, but it wasn't over. Not yet. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions erupted across the void as the exiled fleet pushed into enemy territory, but for every ship they destroyed, more appeared. Vaylon knew they were running out of time. "What's the enemy fleet count?" he asked, his voice sharp. Rylus checked his console. "We've taken down nearly half their force, but reinforcements are coming in waves. If we don't take down their central flagship soon, we'll be overwhelmed." Admiral Hale's voice crackled over the comms. "Then we hit them now. Hard." Vaylon turned back to the holographic display. The eclipsed flagship was massive, heavily shielded, and surrounded by an elite guard. Attacking it directly would be suicide. Unless... What if we force them to move? Vaylon mused. Rylus frowned. How? Vaylon's mind raced. If we make them think we're launching a full-scale invasion elsewhere, they'll shift their position. We need to bait them into a weak spot. Hale's voice was steady. "You want a distraction?" Vaylon nodded. "A big one." Hale chuckled. "I think I can arrange that." Minutes later, Earth's fleet made its move. A full squadron of warships split off, feinting an assault on a different sector of the battlefield. The eclipsed ones responded immediately, diverting a large portion of their forces to counter the fake attack. Vaylon watched the tactical screen. "Come on, take the bait." Then, the enemy flagship shifted position. "They're moving," Rylus confirmed. "They're leaving an opening in their rear defenses." Vaylon didn't wait. "All units, move in now!" The exiled fleet surged forward, cutting straight toward the exposed flagship. "Target their engines!" Hale barked over comms. "If we cripple them, they can't escape!" A fresh wave of laser fire and missile strikes erupted across the enemy lines. The eclipsed flagship shuddered as its rear thrusters were torn apart. For the first time in the battle, the enemy was losing control. Vaylon gripped the edge of the command console. "Rylus, what's their status?" Rylus scanned the data. "They're trying to reroute power to secondary engines, but they're vulnerable." Vaylon didn't hesitate. "Finish it." The order was given. The exiled fleet unleashed their final strike. A coordinated barrage of warheads and beam cannons slammed into the flagship's core. The impact sent shockwaves through the void. Then, the eclipsed flagship detonated in a blinding explosion. A silence followed. Then, Rylus exhaled. "Their forces are retreating. We did it." The command center erupted in cheers. Vaylon let out a slow breath. They had won. But he knew this wasn't the end. Hale's voice came through the comms, quieter than before. "They'll be back." Vaylon nodded. "Then we'll be ready." He turned toward the viewport, watching the enemy remnants disappear into the void. This battle was over. But the war for Earth's future had only just begun.